What if everything you've been told about finding yourself is wrong? For decades, we've been sold the same story. That somewhere, hidden beneath confusion, beneath our jobs, our relationships, our failures, there lies a single, authentic self, waiting, like buried treasure, fixed, stable, pure. We're told that if we read the right book, meet the right teacher, or take the right journey, we'll finally uncover who we truly are. But what if this story is a myth? What if the search itself is the problem? Modern culture thrives on this promise. Self-help empires, corporate advertising, even the subtle words of friends and family, all whisper the same message: you must discover yourself. It's a comforting thought. If the real you already exists, then purpose and meaning are guaranteed. Eventually, all you have to do is find it. And yet, how often does the search never end? The retreats don't heal. The books don't satisfy. The career changes don't bring clarity. Instead, the sense of self remains slippery, shifting like a shadow, always just beyond reach. You may have felt it yourself, that gnawing suspicion, that you are chasing a horizon that always recedes. This isn't an accident. It's a trap, a story we've inherited. Repeated so often, we mistake it for truth. But the ancients, especially the Stoics, saw through this illusion. They never spoke of finding yourself. To them, the self was not hidden treasure. It was fire, metal, something to be forged, shaped, and remade. Life, they believed, was not about discovering who you are, but about becoming. Again and again, through the choices you make, through the discipline you cultivate. So the real question is not, who am I? The real question is, what am I becoming? This is not another map to a mythical true self. It is an invitation to tear the map apart, to see the myth for what it is, and to step into something far more unsettling and far more liberating. Because the truth is simple. There is no self to be found, only a self to be made. If the idea of a true self sounds appealing, that's no accident. Entire industries have been built on this promise, that somewhere out there, you are waiting to be found. Walk into any bookstore. The shelves overflow with guides on how to unlock your authentic self. Scroll through social media, and you'll hear influencers telling you to live your truth. Therapists and motivational speakers repeat the mantra, be who you really are. It is seductive because it promises certainty. It whispers, beneath the noise of your confusion, beneath the weight of your failures, there is a stable core, a version of you untouched by time, free of contradiction, waiting to be unearthed. And if only you buy the right book, attend the right seminar, follow the right guru, you will uncover it. But this vision is not philosophy. It is marketing. The story of a fixed, hidden identity serves those who profit from your restlessness. Self-help culture thrives on uncertainty. Its engine is your suspicion that something essential is missing. The myth of finding yourself is not a solution. It is a business model. Consider the endless recycling of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Once a framework for myth and storytelling, now repackaged as a roadmap for self-discovery. You, too, are told you can be the lone hero, called to adventure, facing trials, and at the end, uncovering your authentic self. But unlike the ancient myths, there is no final reward. Each book, each seminar, each online course simply points to another step, another missing piece, keeping you suspended in a search that never ends. Consumer capitalism sharpens this further. Be yourself becomes a sales pitch. Find your truth is plastered on advertisements for clothes, cosmetics, even luxury retreats. Authenticity itself has been repackaged as something you can buy, a lifestyle to wear like a brand. And now, in the digital age, the myth has found its loudest amplifier: social media. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok thrive on curated identity. They don't just tell you to find yourself. They tell you to perform yourself, to package your supposed authenticity into consumable fragments. Each post a piece of a brand, a projection of who you think you are or who you want to be seen as. The result is a paradox, a world obsessed with authenticity while drowning in artificial performances of identity. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. The more you chase the mirage of a fixed self, the more it slips away. Each attempt to define yourself tightens the trap. You might feel comfort for a moment, a slogan, a retreat, a viral post. But soon, the restlessness returns. The horizon stretches farther. The search never ends. And this is the hidden secret. The industry does not want you to find yourself, because if you did, the market would collapse. What it needs is your endless uncertainty. You're longing for a self that doesn't exist. And so the myth persists, not because it is true, but because it is profitable. To understand how deeply the myth of finding yourself has taken root in our culture, we need to step back and ask, has humanity always thought this way? The answer is no. For most of history, identity was not something to be found at all. It was something lived, something enacted through duty, tradition, and shared values. In the ancient world, identity was inseparable from community. You were not a solitary self wandering in search of authenticity. You were a citizen, a family member, a participant in a collective order. For the Greeks, the question was not, who am I really, but am I living in accordance with virtue? For Aristotle, to live well was to flourish as a rational, social being, fulfilling your role within the polis. The Stoics carried this even further. Epictetus, born a slave and later a philosopher, never spoke of uncovering some hidden essence. His concern was discipline of the mind, learning to distinguish what is within our control from what is not. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, wrote night after night in his meditations, not to discover a true self, but to remind himself of duty, of the fleeting nature of existence, of the importance of aligning with reason and virtue. For the Stoics, the self was not buried treasure. It was a project, something shaped, moment by moment, by the choices you make. Centuries later, in the medieval period, identity was framed in relation to God. The ultimate question was not, who am I, but whose am I? One's purpose was rooted in divine order, in faith, in spiritual duty. To search for a hidden identity apart from God would have seemed not only meaningless, but dangerous. It wasn't until the Enlightenment that the shift began. The rise of rationalism, humanism, and political revolution placed the individual at the center. No longer defined entirely by tradition or faith, the self became something autonomous, something to be expressed. This was a turning point. Freedom brought dignity, but it also brought uncertainty. Without the anchors of communal duty or divine order, people began to wonder, what makes me me? By the 20th century, psychology gave this question a new vocabulary. Thinkers like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow spoke of self-actualization, of discovering the authentic self. What had once been a philosophical pursuit of virtue became a psychological quest for identity. The obsession with authenticity, so deeply embedded in modern culture, was not a timeless truth. It was the product of this historical evolution. Seen in this light, the idea of finding yourself is not universal. It is a cultural invention. Ancient Stoics would not have recognized it. Medieval Christians would have dismissed it. Even Enlightenment thinkers, who celebrated individuality, might have been wary of its excesses. The myth feels natural only because we live in its shadow. But if we step back, we see it for what it is. Not eternal wisdom, but a story humanity has only recently begun to tell. What if the self you are searching for does not exist? Not because you are lost, but because you are in constant motion. This was the radical claim of the Stoics. To them, the idea of a stable, hidden identity was not only false, it was dangerous, a distraction from the true work of living. Epictetus, born into slavery and later freed, understood this deeply. For him, identity was never handed down by birth, by status, or by title. It was revealed in judgment and in action. He reminded his students, external labels, slave, citizen, emperor, beggar, are beyond your control. What matters is how you choose to respond to life's circumstances. You are not what happens to you, Epictetus implied. You are what you make of it. Your essence is not waiting in some secret chamber. It is forged again and again in the fire of each decision. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor weighed down by war and responsibility, carried this vision further. He described the self as a river, ever-flowing, ever-changing, never the same from one moment to the next. You cannot step into yourself twice, because you are not a static object. You are a process. The man who woke yesterday is not the same man who writes tonight. Identity is not an anchor. It is a current carrying you forward, whether you resist or not. To cling to permanence is to suffer. To embrace change is to live. Seneca, writing from the heart of Roman politics, gave the same lesson. True identity is not discovered in retreat. It is revealed in the furnace of adversity. Trials, he insisted, are not obstacles. They are opportunities. Each hardship reshapes us, like iron hammered into form. To know yourself, for Seneca, was not to search for a hidden core. It was to meet life head-on, to let difficulty show you what kind of person you are becoming. From these voices, a Stoic challenge emerges. The self is not a noun. It is a verb, not a thing to be found, but an activity, a continuous act of shaping. Think of a sculptor standing before a block of marble. The figure inside does not already exist, waiting like treasure. It must be carved, struck, formed through labor. Each choice you make, each thought you discipline, is a strike of the chisel, shaping the stone of your own becoming. Or think of fire. A flame never stays the same from moment to moment. It consumes, it transforms, it renews itself endlessly. The fire's essence is not in remaining, but in burning. And so too with us. Our identity is not permanence. It is the ceaseless act of change. This is the Stoic alternative to the myth of finding yourself. There is no secret chamber, no final revelation of who you truly are. There is only the daily practice of shaping, the conscious act of becoming. It is harder than self-help promises. It offers no final destination, no comforting certainty, but it is also more liberating. For if you are not fixed, if you are not bound to a static identity, then you are free. Free to transform, free to create, free to become more than what you were yesterday. The Stoics remind us, you are not a finished product waiting to be discovered. You are the sculptor and the marble, the river and the current, the fire and the fuel. The question is not, who am I? The question is, what am I choosing to become? The Stoics spoke of the self as fluid, dynamic, shaped by action. Centuries later, psychology and neuroscience have confirmed what they intuited. Identity is not fixed. It is constructed, reconstructed, rewritten, moment by moment. Modern psychology describes identity as a narrative. The self is not an object hidden inside us. It is a story we tell ourselves, a thread we weave from memory, culture, imagination. This story gives us coherence, but it is never final. Like a novel that never ends, each new chapter reframes the last. Today, you may call yourself ambitious. Tomorrow, broken. The next day, resilient. None of these labels is ultimate. They are drafts, revisions in a manuscript that is always being edited. Neuroscience takes this further. The discovery of neuroplasticity reveals that the brain itself is not static. Neural pathways strengthen with practice. They weaken with neglect. They reorganize after trauma. Habits, thoughts, behaviors, literally, rewire the mind. The brain is not a sculpture carved once and left untouched. It is clay, soft, malleable, molded daily by experience. This is the biological reality of becoming. You are not who you were yesterday, and you are not yet who you will be tomorrow. And yet, despite this truth, we cling to labels. I'm the smart one. I'm the creative one. I'm the broken one. These identities become cages, roles we step into and never escape. A child praised as gifted may grow afraid of failure, avoiding risk to protect the illusion of intelligence. A person who identifies as damaged may resist healing, because growth would shatter the story they've built around their pain. In both cases, the myth of a fixed self traps us, not because it is real, but because we believe it must be preserved. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort when reality collides with the story we tell about ourselves. Instead of rewriting the story, we distort reality to protect it. We reject feedback, deny change, sabotage growth, all to defend a fragile identity. But the Stoics offer an antidote. By rejecting the myth of a static self, they dissolve the tension that dissonance feeds on. If the self is not fixed, then there is nothing to defend. If identity is fluid, then contradiction is not failure, it is evolution. This fluidity is not chaos. It does not mean drifting without direction. For the Stoics, the compass was virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. Not identities to possess, but practices to embody. Actions that shape the unfolding narrative of who you are. And here lies the psychological power of Stoic becoming. When you embrace impermanence, you unlock resilience. You are not confined to yesterday's mistakes. You are not trapped by yesterday's labels. You can rewrite, reshape, remake yourself again and again. Like a river, you may bend, widen, or change course, but you never stop moving. The illusion of a true self offers comfort, but chains you to stillness. The reality of becoming offers uncertainty, but grants freedom. The question is not whether you will change. You already are. The only question is, in what direction will you choose to grow? The myth of finding yourself has always been tempting, but in the digital age, it has been weaponized. What was once a philosophical question is now an industry of identity branding, driven by algorithms, advertisers, and political agendas. Social media promises connection, but what it really demands is performance. Your profile is not you. It is a curated illusion, a highlight reel stitched together to resemble a coherent self. Every post, every caption, every carefully chosen image is less about expression and more about projection, a crafted signal of who you believe yourself to be, or who you want others to believe you are. The irony is suffocating. Platforms built on authenticity have generated oceans of artificial selves. But the trap runs deeper than vanity. By branding identity, social media turns the self into a commodity. Your personality becomes content. Your image becomes data. Your very sense of self becomes currency. For corporations who profit from your endless need to refine, improve, and perform your true identity. And this obsession bleeds into culture at large. We are told to choose labels: political, sexual, psychological, spiritual. Each one promises clarity. Each one offers belonging. But they also confine, reducing the richness of a human life to a single tagline. And then comes the paradox of choice. Never before have humans had so many ways to define themselves: careers, hobbies, aesthetics, philosophies, subcultures. But abundance does not bring clarity. It breeds paralysis. When every option is available, no choice feels final. No identity feels secure. Instead of freedom, we find anxiety. Instead of authenticity, we find fragmentation. This is the digital promise, that if you scroll long enough, shop long enough, express long enough, you will stumble upon the real you. But like the horizon, it always recedes. The myth of a fixed identity keeps you restless, searching, consuming, because platforms and corporations do not profit from your contentment. They profit from your uncertainty. And here lies the danger. A static self is not just a personal illusion. It is a point of vulnerability. The tighter you cling to an identity, the easier it becomes to manipulate. Media can tell you what products people like you buy. Politicians can tell you what people like you believe. Algorithms can predict what people like you desire. In a world obsessed with labels, the most dangerous thing is not being lost. It is thinking you have finally been found. The Stoics warned of this trap centuries ago. To define yourself by what lies outside your control is to hand over your freedom. And in the digital age, that warning has never been more urgent. If the myth of finding yourself is an illusion, then what takes its place? The Stoics offered a radical reorientation. Instead of asking, "Who am I?" they asked, "How should I live?" This subtle shift changes everything. The first question assumes there is a static answer, a riddle with a final solution. The second assumes life is an ongoing practice, a path without a final arrival. It does not ask you to search for an essence. It asks you to live in a way that continuously shapes who you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius gave us one of the clearest examples. Night after night, he sat alone with his thoughts, writing what we now call meditations. These were not revelations of a hidden self. They were reminders, discipline for the mind. He did not write to find himself. He wrote to train himself, to resist distraction, to remain humble, to keep virtue as his compass. His journal was not a mirror reflecting identity. It was a forge shaping a new one. Epictetus, once enslaved, taught the same lesson. The central Stoic practice, he said, is to distinguish what lies within your control from what does not. Identity is not built on wealth, status, or reputation. It is forged in your judgments, in your actions, in your discipline. To place your selfhood in the hands of the external world is to surrender it. To ground it in what you can control is to be free. Seneca, navigating the turbulence of Roman politics, spoke of virtue as the only true compass. Pleasure fades, pain comes and goes, fortune rises and falls. But virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance remains. For the Stoics, virtue was not an abstract idea. It was the foundation of identity itself. You are not what you own. You are not what others think. You are what you practice. From these voices, a picture emerges. The Stoic path is not about uncovering a final truth about who you are. It is about returning again and again to the daily practices that refine who you are becoming. Reflection, discipline, virtue, not hacks, not techniques, but lifelong commitments. They do not end in revelation. They create a rhythm of becoming that lasts until your final breath. And here lies the paradox. In rejecting the illusion of a final destination, the Stoics found peace. If there is no true self to be discovered, then there is no pressure to arrive. If the journey never ends, then every step, no matter how small, is already the path. The self is never discovered once and for all. It is reforged in every decision, in every challenge, in every act of discipline, like a river reshaping its course with each season, like a flame renewing itself with each spark. Identity is never still. It is becoming, always becoming. The Stoic path is not a treasure map to authenticity. It is a way of living, a way that transforms uncertainty into freedom, a way of seeing that turns identity from a cage into an open horizon. And it leaves us with a question far more powerful than, who am I? It asks, given this moment, this challenge, this brief life, how will I choose to live? We began with a question. What if everything you've been told about finding yourself is wrong? Now, at the end, the answer becomes clear. The truth is not that you are lost. The truth is not that somewhere, beneath the noise of life, a pure and permanent self waits to be uncovered. That vision is a myth, a story designed to comfort, to sell, to pacify. The deeper reality is far more unsettling and far more liberating. You are not fixed. You are not a hidden object waiting to be revealed. You are a process, a current, a becoming. Like a river, you are never the same twice. Each choice carves your course. Each thought shifts your flow. You do not discover the river. You shape it as it moves. To embrace this is to abandon the endless search for certainty and to accept instead the responsibility of creation. The Stoics remind us, the question is not who am I, but how should I live? Not what will I find, but what will I forge? This is both a burden and a gift. A burden because it removes the comforting illusion of a final answer. A gift because it grants freedom, the freedom to rewrite, to reimagine, to remake yourself in every moment. You are not a seeker chasing a lost self. You are the sculptor and the marble, the fire and the fuel, the river and its course. And so the final question is the only one that matters. If the self is never found, but always made, what will you choose to become? If this journey has challenged you, stay with it. Subscribe, share, and carry these questions forward, not just in thought, but in action, because this path is not a lecture. It is a practice, and it begins again right now with you.